can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, the Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, so today's video, we're going to be talking about West Coast Avengers, a story that technically spills out of the Krakoan era of X-Men and the Invincible Iron Man comics that came along with that, and also into some things that take place in a book that was by Al Ewing called Avengers Incorporated. This was a title that I think was canceled like after, I think even before actually its second issue had even come out, but it was actually a really cool little story that was kind of a throwback to the yesteryear of comics. And you know how sometimes comics can have stories that, well, yeah, they would have like an overarching theme, but a comic that, you know, told a singular story and, you know, kind of got in and got out. But in this particular case, Avengers Incorporated did something that I don't think anyone actually saw coming, and that was the return of Ultron. And that's basically everything that sets up this comic here. This comic is basically showcasing that the new Ultron, which technically was the old Ultron, for those unfamiliar with the way Ultron works, pretty much every time he would come back in the same way that Iron Man has, you know, oh, I have the Iron Man Mark IV or the Mark 37 or the Mark 42 or whatever armor. Ultron would do something very similar. And at one point in time, I want to say it was about roughly 1985, we had Ultron 12, and that version of Ultron came and went just like all the other ones did. But that version of Ultron recently came back in that Avengers Incorporated series. Now, that is ultimately why we see an Ultron serving on the West Coast Avengers in this story. And probably the larger, broader reason for that is because over the course of Invincible Iron Man, when Rhodey, after getting out of prison and the fall of Orchis and wrapping up all the X-Men business, Rhodey decided he wanted to take a new turn, that he wanted to go back to his West Coast Avengers days. Working alongside villains like the Living Laser and Sandman, it basically turned his mind around on how the Avengers tackle supervillains. And what he wanted to do was create something that was very reminiscent of the Thunderbolts, but with more of a bend towards actually rehabilitating these people, not just using them to go out on missions so they can work years off their sentence. No, he wanted to take actual super criminals, because another thing we can't forget is that during the rise of the Powers of 10, the fall of the House of X, all that stuff, during all that, when Orchis was being fought back against by the mutants, there were also supervillains, an army of supervillains from the Bar with No Name, who War Machine had brought in to shut the whole thing down. And once those people did what they did, Rhodey even further realized these people can do good. They can actually fight the good fight. We just have to give them an opportunity. And that's basically what's going on here. He wants to take these characters like, we have Blue Bolt, not to be confused with the old EC Comics version of the character that used to be a part of Blue Bolt Comics. No, that is not the same guy. This is a new character, though I'm pretty sure there's some inspiration in there somewhere if you know where to look. But that said, yes, they're bringing in characters like this. They're bringing in characters like Spider-Woman, who, while technically has not been a villain in quite some time, she has a history with villainy and being on the wrong side of the law every once in a blue moon. So basically, she's kind of there to help round out the team and work as more of a mentor than anything else. And then, of course, we also have War Machine and Iron Man rounding out the squad as well. But Ultron 12 is the one who is kind of like the most shocking member of the team, considering, you know, that he technically was one of the Avengers' greatest nemesis. But yes, this is an Ultron who's turned over a new leaf. If you're wondering how all that happened, once again, we're going back to Avengers Incorporated. It was actually in that series that Ultron 12 had masqueraded as the character Victor Shade, and in reality, wasn't really him. He actually was Ultron 12 in disguise, and he was trying to stop actual Ultron, who some of you may or may not remember. There was about a solid decade or so where Ultron and Hank Pym had been fused together as one singular entity, and once they were split apart, and this once again kind of goes even a little bit deeper to the ending of Avengers Incorporated, Hank Pym decided he wanted to try and take Ultron out once and for all to get revenge for what Ultron basically forced him to do while he was wearing half of Hank Pym's face. And Ultron was also trying to exact revenge, as he is always wanting to do, and he basically tricked Hank Pym proper into basically orchestrating a new Lethal Legion, the very same Lethal Legion Hank was going to try to use to take out Ultron. Ultron had already thought 20 chess moves ahead and had infiltrated that Lethal Legion and beat Hank Pym to the punch. But it was actually this Ultron, Ultron 12, who stepped in and stopped Ultron proper from taking over Hank Pym once more. And once Ultron 12, after all the dust had settled, all the smoke had cleared, Ultron 12 reformatted himself into a new body. That new body being that of a new Ultron. So yeah, if you're wondering why Ultron is running around and acting like a good guy all of a sudden, that's why. All that aside, there still is the issue of, well, if these West Coast Avengers are now working together and they have this very tenuous partnership going on with villains like Blue Bolt, who seem to not really get the whole idea of being a hero. Like, they're too caught up in their villainous mindset that, they probably, it's going to take them a while to get there, but, they're going to get there. And we also know that Tony is calling in a favor, trying to get Firestar on the team because he thinks that she could be a positive influence on the team. But the problem with that is that Firestar is undergoing an arc of her own, and that's because during the Krakoan era, she worked as a double agent for Orchis. She was already persona non grata on the X-Men team because she was perceived as being a cop, largely due to some of her actions going back towards, you want to say kind of Civil War era on. She acted less like a mutant and more like an Avenger more often than not. Let's just put it like that. But getting away from that, she is going to be coming to the team. She's going to be bringing her own baggage because of her acting as a double agent within Orchis. It has driven her to drink. And if anyone knows anything about having a history with alcoholism, it would be Tony Stark. And this is something I think a lot of people tend to forget. Tony Stark, while yes, he had his demon in a bottle era and that is behind him, one of the things people tend to forget is that while yes, he is no longer an alcoholic, he does in fact stay very closely tied to other heroes who have also had battles with alcoholism. Probably the most famous among them being Captain Marvel. During the Avengers era, Tony was instrumental in helping Carol Danvers get off the sauce. And as a matter of fact, he acts as her sponsor to this very day. As a matter of fact, it was why I think, maybe not for the exact same reason, but at least for me, why I thought that the battle between the two characters seemed way so manufactured during Civil War II, considering that these two people relied on each other in ways that I feel like it made no sense for them to not be able to have a conversation. But that's a story for another day. I'm not here to relitigate Civil War II. But what I am here to say is that while Tony thinks she'll be bringing something to the team in terms of positivity, she's actually going to be bringing more negativity to the team because she's on the sauce, and it's pretty clear she already has a problem. He's basically tied himself down with yet another character who he has to babysit himself and will very likely help her get through her alcoholism battles that are plaguing her right now. And Tony will probably need even more hands on deck to help out with this, because at this precise moment, while yes, we have supervillains on the team, we have a Firestar on the team, we have an Ultron who is completely reformed and is a good guy now, well, Ultron is still a problem. But not this Ultron. You see, while they thought Ultron was destroyed at the end of Avengers Incorporated, he is in fact back. And he is, for whatever reason, very much involved in what is effectively a techno-organic cult. Now, I say that because there's a character who Tony is introduced to early in the first issue who is a cancer patient who apparently is on her last legs. A woman by the name of Meredith. And it's kind of funny, when I was reading this issue, I was like, wait, are we going back to the Jane Foster has cancer era? Because just, it was just kind of weird just looking at her. She looked very much like how You would remember Jane Foster during those days, but it's not her. It's a completely different character. But the point is, this is a character who has given up. She knows that the cancer is going to take her out, and she is just ready to go. However, she has thrown in her lot, as have a lot of other people apparently, with the new Ultron. And this new Ultron, while he looks like Ultron Classic, and I would imagine would be indistinguishable from the Ultron 12 that is now serving on the West Coast Avengers, this is an Ultron who is not trying to be good. He is trying to be evil. He might think that he's doing good. He thinks that he's saving people by taking them and effectively killing them and connecting them to new Ultron bodies. But he's doing this in this very James Jones type of way. It's like he's trying to get everybody to drink the Kool-Aid along with him and die and become cyborgs like himself, because he, as he says himself, he is trying to build a new cybernetic era, the perfect union between man and machine. What's going to happen with this? I'm not really 100% sure how this is going to play out, because I mean, this is Ultron. Ultron does what Ultron does, and I feel like having an evil Ultron and a good Ultron is definitely going to create some unique story scenarios. It's definitely going to make things difficult for Ultron 12, which I think is actually where the lion's share of that storytelling is really going to shine. I think that, you know, having an Ultron who actually wants to do good, who can and has the capacity to do good, I think that's a very telling thing. And I feel like the best story you can tell is having that evil Ultron come back and muddy the water. You know, maybe try and push this Ultron 12 over the edge to try and get them back onto their side. I could easily see that, you know, being, you know, where we go with this. But I definitely say, just in the first issue, you know, Jerry has a good idea of what to do with Iron Man. He proved it with the Invincible Iron Man series, which I thought was actually some of the best Iron Man. Yeah, I still don't like it as much as the Christopher Cantwell stuff, but I still thought it was some of the best Iron Man I'd read in a long time. And that's actually saying a lot for me, considering under normal circumstances, I normally couldn't give two squirrel farts about Iron Man. So yeah, I think that, you know, he's doing a good job here, and all the characters, they sound like they should. They're, you know, conversing the way they should, and I think Jerry has a pretty good handle on these characters, considering he had already been writing quite a few of them for a while now. He's already been writing War Machine. He's been writing Iron Man. He has been writing characters like technically Spider-Woman to, you know, some extent in the past, I believe. But more specifically, kind of looking more at Firestar, because he was also writing the core X-Men title, where Firestar was pretty much large and in charge for, you know, the past like year and some change, couple of years actually. So yeah, I don't think there's anything to be concerned with there. If anything, I'm actually just hoping that, you know, whatever comes next, I'm hoping that this one feels more personal. Like, I don't want it trying to get too far out into the weeds with other stuff, trying to jump to, you know, crossovers and, you know, things of that nature. I want this, like, I actually want this West Coast Avengers team to feel like the old West Coast Avengers team, the original team. And I think we're pretty close to it.